I'm sure some of you followed my position about Nnamdi Kanu immediately I was sworn in. I guess my first visit to the president was the discussion on Nnamdi Kanu, and I came out and granted an interview about what I had just discussed with the president. So I still believe that the right thing to do is to release Nnamdi Kanu, and hopefully that will happen soon.
Sir, I really want to appreciate you for what you are doing in IMO State. Unlike the disaster we are seeing in IMO State, you are doing very, very well. Coming to IMO State, we don't need this thing to for us to see what we are doing. In terms of infrastructural development, I see in IMO State, I know how IMO State used to be. You are doing very, very well. And sir, yesterday, you told us we are doing an opening section that the judicial are receiving their money as at Monday. I personally carried out investigation, and one of the judicial officers told me that they are not receiving their money as you claim. And I noticed it that one of your magistrates, who happens to be my friend, used Keke to court. They said that they don't have a car. And I was asking, how do they have their money and they don't even have a car? Secondly, sir, they are still at home in the State. And from Owerri now, nobody is there. And the essence of that is injustice being suffered by the people of Southeast. So you are doing well. You are doing well on the I can give it to you. Please, I want you to intensify effort. Let the Nnamdi be released so that you have peace.
This is quite interesting. You've heard it directly from Barrister Maxwell Opara, one of the lead counsel to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, shattering the table at the ongoing Nigerian Bar Association annual convention in Enugu, saying it very clearly that the only way to go is to call and intensify for the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra. The unconditional release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu will guarantee the safety and security of the eastern population, precisely the southeastern region, as he emphasizes and calls that all stakeholders must ensure, including the governors, the determination and commitment to the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu as the only panacea and antidote to the incessant unrest attack that have bedeviled the eastern region in most recent years. Of course, that was clearly alien to the Igbo people, but suddenly that is just the case. People who are not interested in the progress and development of the eastern region are the ones behind the sponsor of these terrorist activities going on. And he have reiterated his position that the only way to foster peace, order, and tranquility is the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who has assured the entire eastern people that once he's been released, just 2 minutes, he will going to give an order that will restore peace and tranquility in the region. The eastern region has been known for its hospitality, tranquility, serenity, and of course, the ease of doing business. But sadly, that was truncated about a decade ago after the assumption of office of Buhari, who was considered a hater of the Igbo race. Of course, he did not just hide it. He had to express it, calling Igbos a dot in a cycle. What an insult and humiliation. But that, of course, is not a representation of what the Igbos are. Igbos are bigger than Buhari and his entire generation put together, could not be compared with the Igbo race. That is just nothing but the truth. But be that as it may, he went further to criticize what he described as the atrocity and destruction going on in Imo State, describing the government of Imo State under the leadership of Senator Hope Uzodinma, the executive governor of Imo State, as a disaster. Wow, that is quite a very hard one, honestly. Loaded words. And very importantly, I believe that the government of Imo State might possibly respond to this development, describing Imo State under the watch of Hope Uzodinma as a disaster happening in Imo State. Of course, describing the state of insecurity rocking Olo senatorial zone of Kigwe senatorial zone, of course, and Owerri senatorial zone. We've heard series of attacks by the Fulani invaders along Amako here and every other region. The reason why the government of Imo State has given order that the Fulani and herders should vacate the entire Owerri municipal, and they are moving down the suburb regions to continue this start art and suppression of the people. It is quite a very disturbing developments. How well definitely will Uzodinma feel if under his watch, Imo State, being known as the most serene state, hospitable state, is being described as a disaster by reason of the escalations of killing, suppression, intimidation that is going on unabated. Several communities have fled their ancestral homes, and many communities have been turned to ghost town. It is quite very disturbing. But then history will not forget in a hurry that under the watch of Uzodinma, all these things were playing out, which Hope Uzodinma eventually has come to make it clear before the public that this insecurity and unrest, killing and criminality going on is being perpetrated by some political oligarchs, his political opponents or rival, who felt some change or robbed of their opportunities, and whatever be the case, that is just the case. That if that is true, being the chief security of the state, is incumbent on him to eventually ensure the safety and protection of the indigents of Imolite and everyone residents there. So there is no excuse that could be tenable enough to exonerate himself from this action, because he have admitted that the political rivals, who are these political rivals? Are they bigger than the state? And could they be considered as untouchable? So if he has made such claims, let him tell Nigerians or the Igbolites who these political oligarchs are, destroying the peace and safety of the Igbolites. Otherwise, the blame will definitely fall back to him. So he owns it as a duty to brief the Igbolites. Who are those behind the assailants, the killings, the sacking of communities, the infractions, the unrest, the enforced disappearances that is going on in Imo State? Otherwise, he should own up those, of course, take responsibility for such actions. Being the chief security of the state, he has a statutory and constitutional obligation to guarantee the safety of life and property of people of Imo State and everyone resident in Imo State. So that he cannot run away from. Not until he have told Nigerian, the Imolites, who are behind the attacks, and bring such people to justice. Well, in another development, you have heard the governor of Enugu State, Peter Mba, expressing his position in as much as some persons may doubt, of course, the sincerity and commitment of the governor towards the release of Mazen Kanu. He has reiterated that the only way to go is the release of Mazen Kanu and not other way around. That the release of Mazen Kanu has become sacrosanct and a nagging issue of national concern in the interest of fairness, of course, justice, and equity, that an average Igbo man should not be treated, of course, as a slave or third-class citizen. As far as Nigeria is concerned, that Mazen and the Kanu deserve to be released unconditionally. Well, whatever be the case, there have been several clamor and demand for the release of Mazen and the Kanu. And citing what has been going on across the Northeast Central, the only error Mazen Nnamdi Kanu committed or offense was to call for the defense of his own people and her population from the risk of extinction by the invaders, just as what is happening in Plateau, in Benue, which Mazen Nnamdi Kanu has been vindicated. He said this close to a decade or 2 decades ago, which is playing out. He said the time is coming. Plateau, Benue will be invaded by these assailants, whose primary intention was to annihilate, embarking on ethnic cleansing, which even the governor of Jos today has affirmed repeatedly that what is going on in Plateau communities is not herders farmers class, but a premeditated intention to carry out genocide, ethnic cleansing. Today, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu has been vindicated, because if a sitting governor could attach to that reality, truth, undeniable reality, then why is Mazen Nnamdi Kanu still being held behind, of course, the DSS facility? The Benue governor has also expressed this, even while Autumn was a sitting governor of Benue State. He narrowly escaped being lynched as a sitting governor. Eventually, his life was threatened. Now, if the life of a sitting governor could be threatened in Nigeria, what happens to ordinary defenseless population that, of course, also call for worry and concern with the escalations of insecurity rocking the entire region, not just the North Central or the Middle Belt? We've seen the clarity of what is playing out, not even in a Castina, in Zamfara. We've seen the renewed attack and hostility going on. This is not just targeted at the Christian faithfuls. Even the Muslims are being attacked in their mosques. It is quite very unfortunate. So that will tell you clearly that Mazen Nnamdi Kanu saw the future, of course, yesterday. He saw today very many years ago. But some persons decide to live in that denial, and certainly that denial is the price, of course, the people are paying today with their lives. And they are of ancestral homes if they have taken that ways, of course, seriously, and moved proactively to quell or nip the crisis at the board. Even the government was indifferent about that until they are being overwhelmed. The security operatives can attest to the fact that with the current state of insecurity today, even the security operatives, the DSS, the Army, the Navy, everybody is overwhelmed with the current realities. Some security personnel or officers who have served in that several capacity has revealed that the intention of this excellence was to overrun the ancestral communities, indigenous communities of Nigeria, and eventually take over the soul of Nigeria. It is a battle against the soul of Nigeria and nothing short of that. The clarity is becoming more real and undeniable. The reason why the DSS, the current DSS boss, has called the Nigerians communities to mobilize themselves and defend themselves. What does that imply? Because they have informations, classical informations, security details that is not before the public domain, that this has gotten out of hand, what they could contend alone, meaning that it must involve the cooperation of different communities, of course, to rise and fight this monster and deadly trend of assaults, raiding, and ethnic cleansing going on. That not being enough, we've heard the position of the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, who also affirmed, of course, the position of the DSS director, citing that Nigerians, every Nigerian must learn combat skills. You know what that implies? That every Nigerian must be ready to learn combat skills for self-defense. That already is an indictment to the Nigerian government for the continued uh, incarceration of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. It is now clear they are the ones seeing the truth now, undeniably true, that the center could no longer hold. If ordinary civilians who has no military or paramilitary training could be advised to learn combat skills, where would they learn it? Will they be enrolled in the military schools, of course, or be given opportunity to be absorbed in the military, to be acquainted with the combat skills, how to dodge bullets, how to maneuver, how to do this and do that? How could just typical village settlers have access to such training? That is to tell you is a diversionary measure, of course, to shift the responsibility of protecting the Nigerian territory to the individual communities who have no access or, of course, resources to go about this quest, or the quest by the Chief of Defense Staff. Is another indication that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has been vindicated. So why should Mazi Nnamdi Kanu continue in the incarceration become a source of major concern, especially for the Eastern people? Because the reality is no longer deniable. If the Chief of Defense Staff, the Army Chief, the DSS could be speaking in line with the revelation of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, it means Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, despite all the denial or cover up, has been vindicated finally, and it is happening not just in the Middle Belt, in the Plateau, Benue, Taraba, even the Katsina State. The former president of Nigeria hails from Katsina, Daura. The battle has been taken down to Katsina. The the same president who said that Igbos are just a dot in a cycle that could be swept into the ocean. But today, his own community, his own state, his own Fulani, of course, native or kinsmen, is the one terrorizing, including Katsina, as they have been known as Fulani bandits or militias. It is quite unfortunate. This was what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu saw ahead and said if the government could not show commitment and sincerity in the fight against insurgency, then if they have to politicize that, now it is incumbent on the people to rise to defend themselves. The reason why he floated the Eastern Security Network, which he clearly stated their intention was to guide and protect the forest bed. Today, those prophecies, those assertions have come to pass. The forest bed of the southern regions have been infiltrated by the assailants, which the army chiefs describe as aliens, foreigners coming into Nigeria to kill Nigerians. Martin Nnamdi Kanu said it, that the reason why the ESN is being established is to protect the forest beds against invaders. Are that not realities today? Of course. Rather, I will, of course, opine that the service chiefs should apologize to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu for having lived in denial of the realities. But today, they are the one telling us that the forest bed has been invaded by foreigners who are coming to kill Nigerians. The people killing Nigerians today are aliens, foreigners. Of course, they are the one making these confessions and testimonies to affirm the position of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra. But rather than paying attention and, of course, bracing up to fight for this cause to protect Nigerians, they failed to do that because of certain, of course, sentiments and hatred for the people. It's quite is now done on the people. They can no longer deny it, but trying to rigmarole, circumvent issues, but at the end of the day, they are being stuck in the same truth that is standing at all as Sunday. The forest belt across Osogbo, Oyo, Bayelsa, of course, Delta, Imo, Enugu, Anambra have been infiltrated, and Mazen Nnamdi Kanu saw the need, of course, and switched into actions, calling on the Eastern governors to brace up because these are not realities. The battle you deny today will definitely be taken to your village. Most village and communities today, of course, Ihiamufu and the rest of them they are deserted, and is a prophecy fulfilled as Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is being described as the prophet of our time. None of his words has fallen, of course, to the ground without being justified. It is an interesting moment for the governor of Enugu State. Some persons are still apprehensive over his determination and decision, likewise that of other Eastern governors towards the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Possibly they are playing politics with that, but how long will that continue is a matter of time that will define the reality. But the truth is, does Mazi Nnamdi Kanu deserve justice? Of course, certainly, as the Nigerian Court of Law, Appellate Court of Law, the Appeal Court, have ruled this case on the 13th of October 2023, exonerating Mazi Nnamdi Kanu of all the count charges and allegations levied against him by the Nigerian government, dismissing all those count charges on the basis of frivolity and unfounded claims, which Nigerian Legal Council could not establish beyond reasonable doubt. Now, what else would be left for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu to answer? Which other question? Sadly, he's still being incarcerated, and his trial, endless trial, is orchestrated to continue his indefinite detention, which definitely well-meaning Nigerians and international communities are watching and calling for the unconditional release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, having observed what is going on, his position, his statement regarding the current realities in Nigeria today, which has remained undeniable reality. Let's have your own take regarding these updates and what you think is the way forward.